What's up, guys? It's Yellowfin99. It is time for the next part of like my recommendations thing. So I'm gonna be doing uncommons now, and so yeah, these are basically my recommendations for uncommons. For like with commons, I said commons you more want to keep just for like playing clubs if you want to more plan on playing clubs a bunch, because those are the only times you'll mainly need a good common collection. But for uncommons, it's a bit different. There are some really great uncommons that I would recommend keeping. So I'm going to just go through a bunch that have stood out to me a lot. So first off is the Volkswagen Scirocco. It's a great RQ saver. I think it hits 6.977, like maxed out at 323. And it's also very lightweight, so it is a pretty good RQ saver for when playing clubs. Now, any of these other cars that I've noticed, I mean, this one does seem to have pretty decent stats, but I've never kept it, the Datsun 240Z. I know this one's a good one because it has medium ground clearance, so it's a pretty decent RQ saver. Any other cars right here that stand out? Not that I see. I know this one's also a pretty good one to keep just because it has low 0 to 60 for very low RQ, so it is a pretty decent one to keep too. There's probably going to be a lot of uncommons. This one is actually one I would recommend keeping one of. Even though its stats don't look very good, it is pretty useful in off-road club events that require uncommon or German events or rear-wheel drive. Because in clubs, they like to do a lot of events where it's rear-wheel drive and then very low RQ, and then there'll be a lot of off-road. So this car is pretty much a game changer and will help you win a lot of races. Any other cars that I see? I know this one's actually pretty good. I used to have one, but then I had to fuse it away into a rare that I needed to use for an event. But next time I get it again, I'm definitely going to keep it, because it does seem to have pretty good stats at maxed out. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but it does make it a pretty good RQ saver to have. AutoZam's also a good one for Solemn. Okay, this car is also one that I want to talk about too, because I've found it to be very useful. It gets to 6.977 with medium ground clearance, and it's also very lightweight, plus front wheel drive and also French. So it's a great RQ saver for using heavy hitting French cars. It's a car that won't lose very many points on a bunch of track sets. It's one that has medium ground clearance, so you can also use it on city streets. Decent 0 to 60, so it won't be completely destroyed on anything that is regarding fast. 77 handling maxed out is pretty good, so it won't lose too many points on twisty. Also 90s car too. And so it's a great car just to have for if you're planning on saving any RQ. So I'd say that's one I would recommend. This one's also a pretty good one. It's similar to like the AX GTI, but it's just not medium. And so it's basically one like the AX GTI where if you want to use heavy hitting Italian cars, then the Lancia Fulvia Coupe's a great RQ saver to have. Okay, any other cars so far? I know this one's actually pretty decent, like I've been wanting to keep one, but it's a one you don't really need to go out of your way to keep. DS5 used to be pretty good. I'm not sure if it's any good really anymore. TVR Time Hour's one that's pretty good, but I know that new Dodge is a bit better on some track sets. But still, the TVR Timer is also one that's worth keeping. I haven't pulled one in a while, so that's why I haven't kept one yet. This car is a game changer. I have 3 Dodge Slingshots right now. I'm planning on maxing out all 3 of them. You should definitely have one in your garage because they're very useful in any low RQ events, or if you want to save RQ. It's just a very useful car that won't lose very many points. Any others that I see? Opel Kadett GTE, also a pretty good car. 7.285 maxed out at 323. Medium ground clearance. Decently light, actually not decently, very light. And so it's also a pretty good car, especially when uncommon rear-wheel drive events are in clubs, or rear-wheel drive or German rear-wheel drive, or German uncommon events are in clubs. So it's a pretty useful one to have too. And it's got pretty good stats. It's actually got very good stats for its RQ. Peugeot 106 Rally S1's also a very useful one. I've kept it on multiple different accounts and it has been very helpful. I know it hits 85 handling, but I'm not 100% sure what the 0 to 60 is. Same for the Chevy S10 Blazer Extreme. Also a very useful car, great for city streets and also saving RQ in clubs. So none of these are really cars you'll be using a lot like in events. Like maybe there's a few, like a couple coming up, but none of these you'll really use very often in events because it's more for clubs. Like, so some of these you don't really need to keep unless you're planning on playing a bunch of clubs. But some of these still you might want to keep anyway just to have them in your garage, like the Chevy S10 Extreme. And that's basically all and the Dodge Slingshot. Those are the only two I'd recommend so far that you should go out of your way to keep one in your garage. The rest are more for playing clubs and doing stuff like that. Also, Citroen AX GTI is pretty good because there are sometimes low RQ French events and you can't use your slick tire cars. So like my problem with my French garage is a majority of my cars are slick tires, so then I use my Citroen AX GTI for that, even though I don't really end up winning anything then. But still, it's a decent one to have. Dodge D100, I'm pretty sure is the new fastest 0 to 60 uncommon. I'm pretty sure I still haven't pulled one yet, but when I do, I'm definitely keeping it. Fiat Stilos, pretty good one. I used to have it, I don't have it anymore, but when I pull it again, I will keep it. A lot of these are cars I used to have, but then I sold, and then I've just been waiting to get them back. This one I'm pretty sure is going to be really useful. Ford Explorer Sport Track Adrenaline. It has similar stats to the S10 Extreme. I think it's just a little bit worse, so it still will lose to it everywhere. But it has 4-wheel drive, and it's also high ground clearance for only one more RQ, which is actually very useful. Anything else that I see that stands out? Not really. Honda Clarity has 100 MRA, but I've never kept it or ever found a need to keep it. This car has 80 MRA, so I'm going to keep it next time I pull it, and I think it might be actually a pretty useful dragster, since it does have very high MRA for an uncommon car. Conquest isn't too good. It's got decent stats, it's just generic. Anything else here? BMW Z1's a pretty decent one, but also just generic stats, so it's not really one to keep like if you need to. Impala used to be good, but then they added a bunch of cars with high top speed. Renault 9 Turbo is one I've found to be pretty useful because of standard tires, front wheel drive, 7.0, 80, maxed at 323 with medium ground clearance and pretty light. So it is a pretty decent car for racing in the rain. Renault Sport Megane's also a pretty useful one to have just because it has medium ground clearance. Peugeot 406 Coupe is also one that I enjoy having in my garage because it does have pretty decent top speed and also just a great all-around stats. So it's a pretty good RQ saver that won't lose too many points. Anything else here? Chevy Volts, I know a good one. It does get up to pretty high handling, plus it's also standard tires. Lotus Europa 47 Twin Cam is a very useful car. This is also one that I would suggest having one in your garage anyway, even if you don't plan on playing a bunch of clubs. It's still a good one to have. Twizy F1, I'm still looking for mine. I haven't pulled one in like a year, so I still can't get my Twizy. But yeah, it's actually a really good car, so it's also one that I would say keep in your garage even if you don't plan on playing clubs, because it'll still end up being useful. And the Mazda Buenos Roadster RS Limited also is a pretty good one to keep in your garage even if you don't plan on playing clubs, except it is more of a club car, but still it's pretty good. Maserati Indy I also think is good, but I don't really have very much experience with it, so I'm not really sure. But yeah, then also like this is what my uncommon garage is looking like so far, and it's worked out pretty well for me. I have my 3 slingshots and a bunch of just other cars. A lot of cars with similar stats, 6.1, 82, 6.4, 82, and 6.1, 83. And decently high top speeds for these two. So like that's basically what my uncommon garage is looking like, and the cars that I would recommend to keep. There is a few, like more, also, it's not as bad as like, I mean it's not bad, I don't know what that means, but it's not as much of like a thing to go out of your way. Wait, no. So commons, You only need to really keep commons if you're planning on playing a bunch of clubs. Like, there aren't very many commons that you should really keep, because they won't really be of very much use unless you do plan on playing clubs. Uncommons, there's a few that you probably should keep in your garage, even if you don't plan on playing clubs, because they will come of use sometime, like the Slingshot, S10 Extreme. I bet this one will end up being pretty useful in some events. Also, Europa 47 Twin Cam and the Buenos, and then also the Twizy F1. So any of those cars are cars that I would suggest keeping in your garage, even if you don't plan on playing clubs. And then if you do plan on playing clubs, just look at the requirements and see like what requirements come up a lot and which uncommons would be very useful to have. Like, these are all cars that I've found to be very useful, a majority of which are maxed out. Like, the maxed out cars have actually come to a lot of use for like my uncommon collection. So it all just depends on like what events you're planning in and what you're also specializing in too. So yeah, those are my recommendations for uncommons to keep in your garage. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this type of content, please make sure to like and subscribe. Do all that cool stuff. I'm Yellowfin. Goodbye.